Improvements and Street Maintenance Committee for the City of Wausau to order. Today is Thursday, November 11th, 2021. And we have, first item on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have the director's report first, sorry. So we'll switch over to the director's report, and the consent agenda will be item number 2. So, go ahead, Eric.
I guess if any of the committee members have any questions on any of the work that we're doing or updates that are on the
Does anybody have questions on the report at all? It's pretty self-explanatory. Okay. We'll place the director's report on file then, and if anyone has questions for him after the fact, you can certainly ask them of him anytime. Item number 2 then is our consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have 4 items. The approval of the minutes of our October 14th, 2021 meeting, an easement with Aspirus Buildings for a bike and pedestrian path at 905 North 2nd Street, an easement with 3rd Street Holdings LLC for the bike and pedestrian path at 151 McIndoe, action on a preliminary resolution to vacate and discontinue an unpaved alley bounded by Bertha Street, Lakeview Drive, Mount View Drive, and Elmwood Boulevard. Does anyone want to discuss any of those items separately? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Larson, is there a second? Second by Neal. Members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Yes.
Okay,
Opposed.
okay, the record show 1 opposed. That item then passes 4-1. Item number 3, discussion and possible action on a petition for annexation. The petitioner is Gruby, parcel number 076-2907-284-0004 from the town of Stettin.
This is a property owner that's requesting annexation for water and sewer.
Okay, and the recommendation from staff then is to approve the annexation. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion by Larson, is there a second? Second by Ryan. Questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. Item number 4 is discussion and possible action on creating assessor's plat for 901 Town Line Road, 1309 Torney Avenue, 1315 Torney Avenue, and 1321 Torney Avenue. And Alan is on vacation, but he had this one, huh?
Yeah, I can
Okay,
take this.
sure, go ahead.
So, Torney Avenue, this block anyway is on the schedule for reconstruction with CDBG funds in 22. And so, upon looking at this, you can see the yellow lines. The lines don't really line up with how the lots are actually being used, the land's being used. So, one of the options the city has is to create an assessor's plat to correct some of these lot lines. And so this is really just a request through committee with recommendation to council to create an assessor's plat to make adjustment to those property lines.
Okay,
Have you,
Go ahead, Lou.
have you discussed this with the homeowners along the way?
I believe so. I haven't personally, but our surveyor has been,
And
kind
are
of
they okay
working
with
on
it? I mean, their tax base won't go up or down or anything because of the property?
I don't know that. I mean, I think that tax rates might be based on the square footage of land and.
Well, that's kind of what I
so-
mean. Are some gaining or losing any land, or are they just, or is it just realignment, so to speak?
I don't know if any of them are gaining a little bit, I think in the report, it did say the one to the north looked like it was going to gain some property. I think that so if you look at the report, kind of there's a process. So if the council approves this, that we as staff are recommending that we do the work in-house. We don't charge the homeowners for the work. And then they will have their opportunity, once the properties are staked and stuff, to have a say in it. And then there'll also be a public notice once it goes to the DOA, and then residents will have 30 days to bring suit or anything that they want for that, so.
Well, I'm all for Torney Avenue to get fixed because that really needs to be fixed. I've seen that road, I've been on that road, and if this is what you need to do it, if there isn't any complaints or that we're aware of from any residents, I would be for it.
I'm not aware of any at this point.
Well, and so when we look at this map, are the red lines the originals or the yellow?
The yellow's the originals.
Yellow's the original. So when you look at the north side of that street, some of those lines go right through people's homes.
Right.
And so it would certainly make sense to fix that, because when those properties, say one of them ever changes hands, and then a new owner is trying to find their lot line, well, it's in the middle of your house. So
Yeah.
this certainly would, I think, solve a lot of headaches for people going forward, especially on that side of the street. It looks like it's really bad. So,
If you don't mind, Eric, there might be a similar issue on the west side of Wausau, near where I live, where the surveyors haven't done anything since the 50s. I'm not thinking it's this severe, but that they're saying if one house wants to get a survey done, they're going to end up having to replat the whole west side. And I guess I don't want a elderly senior have to pick up this cost. So can you explain a little bit more about it, about how the city would be working, and so that it wouldn't be a hardship for each of these residents to have it surveyed individually?
Yeah, so because the city would be the one requesting this plat, then one of the options, the city does have the option to charge the homeowners for the cost of that, but rather than that, it's staff's recommendation, since the city is actually initiating this, that we would do the survey in-house, so that there wouldn't be a cost to these homeowners. And it cleans up ours, because then the lot lines would actually map up to how the property is actually being used. Currently it's not, and so.
Yeah, because definitely, I mean, it's showing going through in the middle of homes and that.
Right.
And I guess I would think they would have had some issues in the past with that, but this should correct it then. All right, thank you.
do we have a motion to approve the assessor's plat?
I also make the
Motion from Larson, is there a
I will.
second? Second by Ryan. Further discussion? Questions? Seeing none? Members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. Item number 5 is review of parklets. You'll recall last spring, we talked about issuing a permit to add parklets in our downtown along the River District corridor, and we agreed that we'd come back to this committee and review our results to decide if we wanted to continue them, discontinue them, have more discussions. We've got some options. So we do have, Tyler Vogt is with us. He's the owner of the one parklet that got a permit this summer, that sought one, even though they were available to all businesses. And we also, in your packets, you'll find some communications that have come in from some of the neighboring businesses on 3rd Street, one in May and then some more recent. And so I guess just to touch off the discussion, Tyler, do you want to talk with the committee about what your experience was with the parklet first? Sure. Okay. How did things go?
Fantastic. I would estimate we had between 3,000 and 3,400 people use it in an 18-week period. It was so busy, we actually had 7 servers on for the first time in our history. We actually had to add help in the kitchen, which resulted in another permanent job. We opened extra shifts for our bartenders, which helped them out. We had, I wrote some stuff down for you guys here, 48 shows over 18 weeks, which in conjunction with the city doing music on Wednesday and Saturday, I programmed that space Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. So there's live music in the downtown Wausau area for 18 weeks for free. I mean, the city did their 2 shows and I did 3 every week. The jazz shows on Sundays included local jazz teachers that brought their students out and their families got to see them perform somewhere. Our foot traffic was up nearly 2.5 times on Sundays versus pre-COVID numbers. Most of the business, I'm guessing, that complained about this aren't open Sundays, but there was a lot of people downtown on Sundays for the first time, which is pretty exciting. In my mind, I don't have any doubt that there's definitely more commerce and more people in the area. On the Friday night show specifically, we had people come over from the Elks Lodge and literally dance on the sidewalks. And I was standing there literally playing Harvest Moon by Neil Young thinking, this is exactly what our town should be having in it. With all those things said, I read the letters, specifically the one from the Mint, and some of the ideas from Brushard's and from Jane. And even if I can understand why all these things are a great idea in my mind, and it makes sense to do, because I view parking as a district, I don't think any of the spots, they're public spots, they're for the
Right.
public. And I have 18 people using what 2 cars could fill. I mean, if you want to talk, need and supply and demand and all that stuff. But anyway, in the spirit of working together and being a good neighbor, I have a couple ideas of a way that we could maintain all of the pros of having a parklet in downtown and all the additional foot traffic, and the kids have a place to play and all those sorts of things, but impact 2 less spots. So I made some of these, if I can approach the
Yep,
bench.
come on up.
And I'll
Sure.
come out to you. I just found out about this yesterday, so I did some quick photocopy stuff here. And I talked to Blake this morning.
That's actually another option that I want us to talk about, because I think it's important when we get the right stakeholders together to have an interaction. Early in October, we had a meeting, we had Tyler there, we had the manager at Compass Properties, Mark Craig was there, we had the leadership from Festival of Arts, Eric was there, Eric and I, the mayor was there. And so we had talked about parklets and just the downtown traffic flow in general, and how things can all work together, like how the art festival can work together, how the parklet fits in with that, how local businesses fit with that, and when streets are closed and whatnot. And we had a really good discussion, which could have been the opposite way. I think if the right people get to talk to one another and understand one another, you have good outcomes. So sometimes when people are upset about things, it's because they've not had a proactive dialogue, or they didn't know who to contact to solve a certain problem. I mean, just as an example, there was, a little bit of, like pinch point between some of the businesses when 3rd Street's closed for the art festival and the art festival. And so rather than have them feel like downtown doesn't want us, is there a way that they could position things so that businesses remain more visible? Well, that answer was yes. And so just getting them all to talk to one another was super helpful. This, I think, also could be that way. I think if we would, assuming that we decide that we want to know a little more before we make anything permanent, there might be value in having Eric and Blake get the stakeholders all together and have a real interaction between them, and see, where we go with it going forward. So, but yeah, we received some feedback. We received some from Jane Yankee. We got some from Brushard's, the Mint, La Prima. All basically saying the same thing, that downtown parking is at a premium. And, obviously anything that occupies parking long-term, they're concerned about. But, I also think that we have to recognize that when people are coming downtown to eat, they also buy stuff. And I think that also helps our retailers that are not restaurants and bars by bringing people into the area, and especially when they're all open at the same time. So I think there's some value to that. Okay, and then we've got a photo.
Yeah, would you mind if I just explained what I was thinking
Sure.
there?
Yep, go ahead.
So on the first page, I kind of did some photoshopping. There are some cartoon characters enjoying themselves in a
Cute.
parklet. That parklet that's in the new way that I'm thinking. So last year, we basically agreed this is going to be a probationary period. See if there's a demand from the community, see if programming it works, see all these things. And I can tell you for sure it did. It resulted in a lot of entertainment, a lot of foot traffic. The 400 block that quad area was full every Friday night that we had a band out there with people that brought food from other areas, or just whatever, just enjoyed their city, enjoyed the atmosphere, right? But then again, thinking about being a good neighbor here, last year we decided, because it was a probationary period, we didn't want to spend any tax dollars. Actually, I think I was the one that was like, let me pay for all this, because why make any permanent changes until we know there's a need for one?
Right.
So if you look, on the second page here, I've got the street as it's designed, the street the way we did it this year, and an idea for next year, which would just basically be to cut down those 3 trees in that garbage receptacle that masquerades as a bush on the corner of my spot down there. And we know that Diana in the Street is here to stay as well. So we could use that same stage 5 days a week to provide free music downtown. If you took the trees out, I think you could probably use the curb as a form. I don't know. You know what I mean? But I mean, I don't think it'd be a huge investment or whatever to just pour some concrete in there and level it off. But I'd let Eric's expertise on that. The companies that are complaining mostly about the limited needs of their limited accessibility patrons are the Mint and Brushard, so we could just shift the parking down there and put a curb where there's already an accessibility lane. So really, we just need to add one curb, and we could solve all these problems.
And move the ramp. it
One
looks like.
ramp, excuse me, yeah.
Yeah.
Adding a curb would be great on my side, so there's not a tripping hazard, but I'll work that out if you need me to. I'm willing to, anyway.
Okay, so, I mean, that's certainly something to think about.
Yeah,
You know,
it's just an
I think the
idea.
parklet, let's say the parklet did sit in that dashed area that's now the access aisle. They would still be entering and exiting the parklet on the sidewalk side, right? So
Correct.
they wouldn't be impacted by the vehicles that are parking and leaving, because that's,
Not at all, right.
okay?
I just thought this was a nice compromise to move forward with the evolution of all the things that we've gained this year. Again, it didn't cost the city anything last year to try this. I left everything modular the way I built it so that I could augment it in case it had to be moved, which I sort of thought something would come up, even though no one came to any of the meetings to voice anything. Till the
Right.
day I literally put the last brick down. But anyway, in the spirit of being a good neighbor, I just thought this might solve all those problems. And also, if you move the handicap spots further north, right in front of the businesses that are asking for it, when the parklet's gone, you reclaim an extra parking spot in that same space without any further investment.
True enough. This is why I was saying that we should have an interaction with the stakeholders and maybe show them something like this after the engineers get a look at it, to see
Well,
if
I
it's
know, I
even
didn't mean to spring
possible.
this on everyone. I just learned about this whole thing yesterday.
Right,
so.
right. So, no, I think that's certainly, though, worth talking about, you know, having a conversation about to see. The thing, you know, I think the challenge will be, you know, parklet permits are available to everybody, and obviously we approve them case by case, kind of first come, first serve right now. So, you know, if they gain favor, and, you know, you have one this year, you may have a couple next year if someone else wants one or whatever. We're gonna have to be very mindful of the placement. You know, I think that if we make too many modifications, you know, to curbs and to ramps and things, which, you know, they're not cheap, I mean, it certainly can be done, but, we would have to be prepared to make similar adjustments to other areas if there's similar problems in those blocks. We can't just modify curbs and stuff for one business owner. So, you know, I think that we should, I think first assess the value of the way we have it. You know, like Tyler said, you take 2 spots out of service for a
18
couple
weeks out of
months.
6,000,
Yes,
yeah.
but then you bring in thousands of folks. So
Exactly.
there may be value to just keeping it as is, and, you know, rather than trying to modify the curbs and the whatever. So we certainly don't have to act on this tonight. In fact, it's a discussion item only. It's not set for any action. But I think just to take stock of what the experience has been. Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have to hand it to Tyler for his thinking, because, you know, my first reaction when we were going to be talking about this tonight was, you know, to kind of be a little dismissive of the pushback. And Tyler doesn't take that route. He's like, he gets creative
I
instead.
literally lost sleep thinking about
Yeah.
Joe being angry at me
Right.
last night.
You know, I mean, I'm not a native of Wausau, but I've lived here for, you know, going on 22 years, and, you know, gone downtown for umpteen different purposes, for breakfast, for dinner, to go shopping, what have you. And, you know, if I had a nickel for every time, I, you know, drove down 3rd Street and every spot was taken, so I went down the next block or went around the corner and came down and parked on Scott or whatever. You just do what you gotta do.
Right.
I don't remember ever thinking, I'm never coming downtown again because I could not park here tonight. You know, and that kind of, you know, feedback is purely silly. I'm sorry. Anybody that makes a judgment like that about their downtown and they're just gonna go somewhere else and never come here again because they can't park immediately in front of where they wanna go it's just beyond the pale, and it shouldn't be something that we give a whole lot of weight to. I really like, you know, your future thinking here. I think it's very doable what you've done here, but I also will say that, you know, what transpired, you know, this season is just an example of what we've talked about so often about, you know, creating a sense of place, you know, bringing life out onto the street rather than, you know, behind the door. You know, having a street scene, having street life, having that vibe going on is important to a town that's serious about making itself a destination. You know, you have to have that kind of flexibility in street life to really attract people. Now, I don't know that this is the case, but it's possible that maybe the boutique hotel down, further north on 3rd Street might like this idea once they're up and running, that they might want to have a little, bistro out front too. So that could come, down the pike for us. I think we really need to keep thinking along the progressive line in terms of, what's best for commerce, for image, for branding overall, and not get too hung up on, there was reports of somebody, they were really mad because they couldn't park in front of my door. That's not reality.
Well, and I think, I'm glad you brought that up, because, when we had our meeting with the stakeholders over the communications with the art festival's been happening here for decades. And there were similar complaints about the art festival, because that closes the downtown's 3rd Street for 3 days or whatever. And, there's some folks that get pretty upset about that street closure, but you have 10,000 people a day wandering around downtown that would not come otherwise. And so I think you have to look at the greater value of that, because
That's right.
there was similar complaints from similar groups. And so, I think and the other thing we have to weigh too is that this stuff is available citywide. If we had, let's just say like where 2nd Avenue has a brand new face now, what if someplace down there wanted one? And those parking spaces are seldom ever used, after hours, whatever. I think that if we were to only consider, a small amount of feedback and say, oh geez, I don't know if we ever want these again, I think we might be short-sighted, so.
Right. Every case has its own logistics, its own footprint, its own possible problems.
Yes.
So, everyone has to be looked at in terms of, just like Tyler would do it, look at it creatively and go, well, what if we did this instead? I've never thought of that tree planter out there.
It's hideous.
It's-
I pick up broken glass out of it
Yeah.
every Friday.
As being, as that space being a resource
Yeah.
rather than an obstacle.
Well, and now that we know that downtown dining is something that's going to stick
Sure.
around, you've got the shade behind that building instead of the performers looking in the sun. They can actually see the people they're performing to rather
Right.
than looking at a bush. There's some simple things. It's just an idea.
When you think of, people just walking down the sidewalk to get from point A to point B, and in the old model, let's say, they just kind of head straight ahead and off they go, and maybe they look both ways before, crossing the crosswalk. But now you have a situation where, people may be stopping and smiling and interacting and, like you said, dancing. That's diametrically, different than, the just robotic sort of,
Right.
thoroughfare. It's the kind of thing that a lively town really needs to pursue. And we need to find ways to make it happen when it can, rather than find ways to be an obstacle to it. I just think it's really important. So I really appreciate what you've done here. It's like, like I said, if I were in your shoes, I probably would have walked in here just like, oh, come on, this is just done.
That was my first reaction, honestly. I was just like, we just had this meeting, we all agreed on this. But just
Yeah.
because I agree with everything you said, doesn't mean that these other business
I
owners
know,
don't have
yeah.
a perception of something different.
Yeah.
And this is a nice compromise for everybody, and it's not a lot of change, but it maintains. The main thing is, it's hard to program a space without a critical mass of people. So the minute you lose those extra 4 or 5 tables that create a little density, it's really difficult. I know this from previous years, to get anything to feel like there's a vibe, to feel like there's anything happening. And this parklet allowed us to experiment with getting that critical mass, which is the name of the game.
The only thing I would say, I guess, just to weigh in on it, is that the one thing I did like about the fact that it was in the 2 parking spaces, the way we had worked it this year, is that when it was hugged in up to the curb, there was a little walk lane. So when people get out of their car, they're not right up to, the way this sits now, if we were to make these modifications, the exterior, front edge of the parklet is like right there, right at the end.
Well, if there were 2 cars,
So-
that would be the same thing, though.
Kind of, yeah, but,
But yeah, I'm with you. I liked it too.
so, yeah, it's just, so I don't know, I think going forward, if we have future discussions, before next spring. Lou, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am kind of, marked this on the calendar in full agreement with Alder Neal. I have attended the concerts on the square for so many years. I mean, I've attended the concerts on the square when there was a pop-up stage being put up down there every Wednesday.
Yep.
And, you know, it's like he said, you know, of course, I ride a little bike, you know, so I can park that thing anywhere. But you know, I'm not gonna stop coming downtown because, you know, I can't get a parking spot to go see my concert on the square, because that's what I do. You know, I firsthand witnessed your parklets out there this year because of the fact I was down every Wednesday that didn't rain
Right.
on the concert on the square, because it's just something I do. I say, why should I sit home on a Wednesday night in the summertime when I have this opportunity in this city, when I sit home enough during the winter? You know, and because of that, I patronized your business. I saw how your parklet worked, you know, and I'm in full agreement that to give the Eric Lynn, his department, the, you know, to go ahead to look forward and to see how we can improve this.
Sure.
You know, but also want to say, another thing is, we also need to be very careful in moving forward that we don't create more of a problem than what it's worth. And by saying that, by putting out too many of them.
Yep.
You know, so, and I guess that's something that Eric would have to look forward as we, and us as a committee, as we move forward with this, but I am in full agreement to move forward with this.
Thank you for that. I think that also the idea that we were cautious to start with and saying, we only want one of these per block for now because, you know, parking, there's a balance to be achieved. You know, I think if we had blazed ahead and not limited them and they were everywhere and really snarling up parking, that would be different. But, I mean, obviously, this was an experiment, and I think even if you, let's just say, you know, if everyone really likes them, if you had one of these in each block face in the area, I think that the impact to parking, part of the thing is that we've always said when we talk about parking in here, is that most communities, people are used to parking either in a parking lot or in a ramp or somewhere and walking a little bit to get where they're gonna go. That has not been the case in Wausau, and so often the mindset is that if somebody can't park 30 feet from the door of where they're going, they're just not gonna go, or they're gonna go somewhere else or whatever. But I think that can be worked with. Go ahead, Luke.
Madam Chair, one other thing I forgot to mention was, you know, on Wednesdays, I believe, Wednesdays, the whole street was closed off anyway,
Yes.
you know, because of dining on the street.
Yep, Saturday too.
You know, so, and I thought that was a plus too, so, you know, not only, maybe for people for inconvenience, they still have the mall ramp to park in if they really need to, but I mean, for the safety of the factor that people can walk around downtown on those areas and not have to worry about dodging traffic.
Right, true.
So, thank you.
Very true. So we don't have this as an action item, but are we kind of in agreement that we would like to have our staff work with the stakeholders and come up with a plan for 2022?
Yes.
Deciding that we might want them permanent, maybe we want to change something about the permit, but I think we had a pretty good plan going forward. Deb?
Well, I guess I would just like to give a different perspective that I have, I'm a baby boomer, and I don't, I guess, get downtown as often as I like. And I've had a bum knee for like 10 years, so I have a handicap sticker and try to park close to where I'm going because my knee just goes bad and I limp quite a bit within a couple of blocks. So, you know, I understand what the Mint. There's probably an older crowd that go there. It's kind of like a Shotguns, you know, Narrows restaurant, but it has affordable rates. And so I think I can't say the details per se, but I would think it does seem to have an older population that wants to go there. They want to be able to get a parking space right out front. And then you're dealing with younger crowds that are able to walk blocks away and park and such. Now, I agree with you, though, that it does seem like if the tree can come down and parking and using that end of that parklet and then using that bump out, as long as you're not blocking the former bank on the corner, I would think that would be kind of ideal. But I understand that there are some that are seniors, and I guess I have noticed more when going into different stores, how many people older than 40 or 50 are limping or have some issues, and so that can't necessarily go as far. And I guess for me, I grew up in the UP. It just happens, park on Lake Michigan was on a bluff and with a big shell, so that people could park sit on the hill, the kids play on the hill and roll down in that, and it had a long 3 sides for parking, so that a lot of the seniors could be sitting in their cars and listening to the music and that. And I guess for me, I like being at Marathon Park and listening to the music there, and people sitting in their cars and then honking their horn as applause, or that sitting in the shade is another option for those that don't want it as crowded. But I realize you're kind of fighting two kind of generations, with one with limitations and one without. But I do think on that southern end, taking out the tree, and as long as the business on the corner is okay, I would think would be ideal. And it's kind of set up the same way as the deli is over by Yankee. I mean, that they're kind of have chairs out there on a regular basis of doing things. But it just seems that for some businesses, it's not worth their while, and with their population, to be wanting to set something up outside.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, if you're hoping there's empty parking spots when there's only 12 in front of the block, you're basically hoping there's less than 24 people in your area.
Correct.
Clearly,
True.
parking is a district-wide problem, and I'm thankful we don't have it. We have so many events where there's 10,000 people downtown, and they're all parked within a half a mile. It's amazing. Like, I applaud this city for what they're doing. And when I moved downtown 15 years ago to start a business, other people told me I'd fail because there wasn't parking. And I said, I don't have to maintain a parking lot, and there's plenty of parking. And I mean, it's a totally different mindset, and I understand both perspectives, and that's why I try to come up with a compromise.
Right.
It's a growing pains, and I get it, and I don't want my neighbors feeling ill will towards me. And I get it, and I see the same things you see, because we're all at the same meetings and parking studies that a lot of people skip. And we all know that there's parking around, but in the meantime, we have these perceptions that there aren't. We have people that have multi-generational businesses here that we need to respect, and I'm just trying to find a way to deal with everybody at the same time.
No, I agree. I have to say, I admire that viewpoint, because, one thing too, I mean, I'm down there a lot, and Wednesday night and other days and nights. And so, I will say that some of the places that are, at least outwardly on paper here, opposed to this, when these events are taking place downtown, they're also doing boom business. I mean, they've got, they all have things that they do on concert night that bring people to them. And, whether it be carryouts or whether it's dining in the street or whatever. And so, I think that we have to look at the greater value. I think if we're all in agreement by consensus that we would like to develop a plan for 2022, that we will consider here like February, before things really get warmed up. And if we need any little adjustments or whatever, we can plan for those. And so then we'll just ask Eric to meet with the River District folks and Tyler. Go ahead, Jim.
When I came tonight, I was worried about parking spaces. I was worried about all the other businesses that didn't have the opportunity to use these facilities. I was worried about the people that told me that they were somewhat disappointed that parking was being reduced downtown. I was worried that this one parklet took up probably the space of 3 angle parking spaces with the handicap area there. I, however, am very impressed with this business owner that wants to work with his neighbors, that wants to do good for the community, that has an idea that we can look at. And I think our engineering should work on that for us so we can have a discussion later and maybe progress to have decent looking parklets. But I would also just suggest that no matter where they are, they don't take up more than one stall, if at all possible, even in the angle area, because there's lots of businesses that use these parking areas, and maybe another business will be able to piggyback onto that parklet or add another one and make the city grow and become vibrant, and so.
Yeah, and they do work in other cities. We've seen, renderings from where they have them. I know Madison has them along State Street. They've had them a long time. They're permanent. They don't even leave in the winter. So, I think it's just something that's new and it requires some adjustment. I think everyone needs to learn how to kind of coexist together. But if we direct, what I hear, I guess, is that we want to direct staff to get with the stakeholders and come up with a plan for next summer. And if they come up with a plan that works and it works, say it works another summer, and we want it to be permanent, at that point, we would create the ordinance provisions that would make it that way. A permanent available permit that people can get year after year, and they wouldn't have to keep coming back to us all the time, so. But if we hammer out some details and we try another summer next year, and we'll take stock of it again, maybe this time next year, see where we're at, and then we can maybe go forward. Are we all in agreement kind of on that? Everyone's nodding?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. Then we're all on the same page and we don't need to vote, so,
Thank you for your time.
sure. Thanks, Tyler, for coming in. Okay, item number 6 is discussion and possible action on the 28th Avenue corridor, Pine Ridge Boulevard to West Wausau Avenue. So, big steep hill.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a history on this, and it's, Alan did the write-up on this. And he's kind of been here since the beginning of this. So, but the county recently has, at their infrastructure committee, has indicated that they no longer wish to pursue this corridor. Staff feels like that the corridor has merit to, obviously, that steep hill is about 18 to 20% grade on it. But, also for carrying traffic, the Village of Maine, you can see that corridor stretches north into the Village of Maine. Conversations at the MPO with the village as well, they would like to see the corridor kept. The one change that we are proposing is that the original corridor was drawn for a 4-lane road. Traffic warrants traffic counts, do not warrant a 4-lane road. And so we are moving forward on a 3-way split to have an engineering firm kind of scale back to a 2-lane road and see how, because right now these areas that you see hashed is on the official city map. And so if anybody or any landowner wanted to build or expand their business, which we have a couple that do, and they're gonna encroach in there, they cannot get a permit from the city for that, because it's on the official city map. So what we wanted to do was scale that back. We still wanna, consider the corridor, whether it's now or in the future, but scale it back to a 2-lane road to see what that would reduce and maybe allow these businesses to, to expand as they would like.
Question?
Go ahead.
Would that be just a basic 2-lane? Would there be bike lane with that? Would there maybe be turning lane opportunities with that road? What would be best for that hill, that grade?
Yeah, as you could see there on the north, before you really get to that hill, that would be cul-de-sac, and we'd kind of eliminate that.
The big steep
the
stretch
big
there,
steep
and then
stretch
meander
there.
around to the west.
Right. And so there wouldn't be through traffic there anyway. And so I think one of the, I don't know all the details, from the plans because it was a 4-lane road, it was wide, it was, had medians, it had all kinds of things. So, our traffic counts right now are, around 3,000, and in 20 or 30 years, we're predicting 5,000, 5,500. So, you have to get up around 14, 15,000 a day before you even consider a 4-lane road. So,
Right, go ahead.
I think, myself living in that neighborhood I find myself, and with having to use that for my previous job, I found myself going around that hill and going down like Westwood Avenue and stuff. So, and I'm sure a lot of people today are doing the same, just because the condition of that hill.
Well, and
Because the condition of that sheet.
dangerous in the winter.
Not only is it dangerous, it's just shot. It's like Rosecrans Street was before
Yes.
they repaired it.
Yes.
And so my concern would be, if you're going to fix this road, and make it just a two-lane, would the traffic flow increase? Because now you have a decent road where people at one time were going around to avoid that road, now are gonna use this road because it's fixed.
Yeah, well, the traffic engineers looked at that, and they don't feel there'd be any considerable increase. Especially, I think initially it was designed for a 4-lane road because it wasn't the village, they weren't incorporated at that time, so there was potential for development of land to the north, for larger developments, and now that's kind of gone away without the access of water and sewer and now Maine being incorporated, so.
Well, and 2-lane infrastructure does tend to slow them down also. You know, you wouldn't have a 4-lane, like, highway-looking type road going through there, but,
So you can't go down fast down that hill.
well,
anyway,
right, but I
without
mean, if they
wrecking
were to
your
build
car.
something that, you know, was 4-lane and a little smoother and graded a little different, people find a way. Westwood Drive is, I would say, overbuilt intentionally for development, so, you know, originally, I think the plan, at least when I first came on, the plan in this committee was that, that through-town piece of County R and even Westwood Drive, some of that infrastructure was to work together in case they ever had to shut down Highway 51, that you could bring people off and get them through the city without a whole lot of fanfare, and, you know, in case you had to have an extended shutdown on that main through-town piece of Highway 51. So I think that's where the 4-lane idea came from too, was if you had to handle that volume of traffic.
Right.
But, you know, I think that if the traffic counts now are so low,
Is that a county road?
It is up to Stewart, I believe. The county maintains that. It is the continuation of County R through the city, but
So the hill is not county highway.
no.
Can we petition to make it one?
Well,
the plan was that it was supposed to be.
I think initially when this corridor was gonna go through is that would have been County R and the county would have built it and maintained it, you know? I guess the question is, you know, the county wants to do away with this, the entire corridor. You know, city staff feels like that there's merit to keep a portion of this corridor in place. The county has purchased a lot of properties within the city along this corridor already. They own them. They've put in over $1 million. We've deferred maintenance on 28th Avenue because 20 years ago, you know, the county had every intention of doing this.
Yep.
And so it's, you know, from a staff perspective, you know, it's a little bit disingenuous, I think, to have the county just kind of arbitrarily back out on something we feel like they committed to, that I feel like would be a benefit to the city at some point with this corridor. And so, and, you know, engineering staff, myself, you know, we feel like that maintaining this corridor, but I'm not exactly sure how the county is gonna pursue this with the infrastructure committee and if it has to go to the county board, but one of the things that the infrastructure committee at the county asked for was for the highway commissioner, Jim Griesbach, to work with the city, and so we had a discussion at the MPO. As I said, the village and city staff feel like the corridor is a good idea to keep. Maybe we shrink it down to accommodate a 2-lane road and then bring those findings back. But, you know, before we did, we wanted the committee to weigh in on what you feel.
I think that we need the ability to, we need options, basically. And so I think for future development and for traffic movement, I think that we have to keep our options open. And I think to abandon this idea completely rather than scale it down may be short-sighted of us. So that said, you know, the land, with the exception of the piece that's north of West Wausau Avenue, it looks like almost all of this path is in the city anyway. It's not township land. You know, and so I think the idea that we would keep something on the official city map, if we would ever need to exercise those options, even if it wasn't in partnership with them to put the infrastructure in, we would want the ability to be able to plan for and do that ourselves if we have to. So, I mean, not to say that that's gonna happen this year or next year, but if we don't keep the options open and we don't keep the stuff mapped, then stuff springs up in the path and you
Right.
can't. You know, if you take stuff off the official city map, then building permits can be issued in that lane. And, you know, I think it's a good idea for us to maybe narrow that down and keep that as a future option for, you know,
You know, I think one of the reasons that this came forward, because, you know, it's been so long since it was initiated, was this Achieve Center here on Madonna Drive and 28th. They applied for a building permit to expand to the east, and they were encroaching in on that official mapping area. And so they initially went to the county, and then they came to us. And in inspections, they haven't been able to issue the building permit because of this.
well, let's
so-
say if we were to amend the official city map and reserve a smaller area, would that help them?
Yeah.
Would we, I
Excuse
mean,
me.
the land that we take off the official city map would be on their side, basically.
Yeah, I don't know what the reduction would be. That's what we would have the engineering firm do.
Right.
And find out what we could reduce this with that.
Because that really would be a win-win. I mean, if we could get, you know, get them out of that area, out of that roadblock, basically, and then still reserve an option for ourselves later, then you kind of achieve both ends. So what are your thoughts, committee?
I'm a little disappointed. I'm a little disappointed that the county isn't considering something that would benefit the 40,000 residents that live in the city, the thousands of residents of the county that may use portions of that road to go to the hospital, which is like one of the largest, if not the largest employer in the county.
Well,
I mean, we need to work together on this, of course, but I don't think we can do it alone. We need help, and that's can be a main thoroughfare from the city to the village and any infrastructure that's built because of that road is going to benefit not just the city, but the county tax base. So
well, and I guess
I would just hope they reconsider.
it bears repeating that a large portion of their wheel tax that they assessed to all of us for a year and then decided to keep in forever, you know, over which we have no say, and we are told by them legally unable to possibly ever share in. Most of the lion's share of that comes from City of Wausau residents that get nothing out of it. And so, you know, I think when we have frank talks with them about infrastructure, all of our residents pay wheel tax, and not $1 of that can be used to shine up the city streets, or even the in-town portion of county roads. So, you know, I mean, once in a while you get some help from them on something, but it's not common place, I guess. You know, the little bit of help that we had maybe along the town line corridor there, and a little bit of help out on County O, but that was, I guess, revolutionary when it happened. So I guess I'm disappointed in this also. I think that there needs to be some corridor protected, even if it's a smaller one. So, all right, do you need us to vote on this to direct you how to proceed?
Yeah, I guess, you know, to keep the corridor, and then also then we would move forward with the engineering firm on a three-way split for them to redesign the road
As a smaller structure?
Yep.
Okay, do we have a motion for that, to direct staff to protect the corridor and work with the appropriate professionals to downsize the corridor? Motion by Ryan, is there a second? Second by Neil. Further discussion?
What parties are in the three-way split?
It would be the village, the county, and the city,
Thank you.
the three of us.
Okay.
I guess I just wanted to point out that this spring I had talked to some neighbors on the 28th and that they had mentioned about the Wausau Child Care getting some road fixing there, and I went up the road and it is really in bad shape,
Yeah, it's
so.
seen its day, that's for sure. Okay, so with a motion and a second on the floor, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. That's our last item, so I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Larson, second by Wadinsky. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No one ever is. We'll stand adjourned then. Thanks, everyone.
Madam Chair?
Tom, go ahead.
Even though streets on Stark,